Welcome to another episode of Iconic Freedom, the Formula. We are setting the standard for accountability and responsibility, the ownership of your choices and the consequences for those choices. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for.
After repeatedly saying he would never do it, and a lot of people are saying that it's hypocritical, etc., as if the other side doesn't do it. But what's your reaction to it?
I mean, I think all of the criticism is valid because, Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time and, they act so self-righteous. The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to, whether or not, his son wanted to be pardoned. He could have said, hey, man, I'm not focused on that right now. But since they were calling Trump a threat to democracy, and they were saying that, nobody's above the law, but they were speaking about him. That's what they were running on. So when he kept saying things like, nobody's above the law, I respect, the jury's decision in regards to my son, he didn't believe that. But he didn't have to volunteer that lie to begin with.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed
You really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a sudden?
No, I'm going to tell you what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over. And this is just my feeling.
Oh, the contradictions. So for this week, I wanted to kind of dissect this interview. I only saw a clip of it initially, but then the more I watched of the entire episode, the more I thought that the information I thought was fascinating. I want to start off with the first piece, which was when Joy Behar was making a comment, and about the conversation, and she was saying that, Joe Biden did this, the other side does that. And again, if that's something you're not familiar with as a tactic from people, they're pointing to somebody else's behavior to excuse their own. No can do. That just doesn't work. It lacks integrity. It lacks responsibility. Listen, if you make the choice, you make the choice. It stands on its own. The other person, whatever they're doing, has nothing to do. And trying to equivocate, that their behavior and your behavior, that, these things, equal each other. It doesn't matter. But it's a game and a tactic that people play. And people do this in your personal life. Trust me. You might be in a conversation with a friend or a partner, and that kind of stuff will come up. It's just like, well, you did such and such. Well, you did this. So that means you don't take responsibility for the choice that you made. And it's like, and what does that have to do with what I just said to you? So it's a deflection. It's a distraction. The media does it a lot. Politicians do it a lot. The second piece that I wanted to follow up, because I think this piece was really interesting to me, which was when the pontificating Whoopi Goldberg decided that she wanted to stop him, and she wanted to say that she thinks that the reason why, which she cannot get in his head, and then I think it's interesting that then she tried to get in his head, that Biden decided to pardon his son was because he was tired of, everybody else getting over, basically in, her slang, her colloquialism of, it appears as though other people are getting away with this, so thereby I might as well do it. Okay, so I can't even begin to talk about how that lacks a ton of integrity and responsibility, because it doesn't matter. Your standard of living, the standard that you set for yourself, your responsibility of your choices, the accountability, the outcomes of those choices belong to you, regardless of what anybody else is doing. I'm certain that you've probably heard this phrase that, integrity is who you are when no one else is looking. And that integrity is built from the choices you make and the outcomes that you own the experience from, and that you say, listen, whatever the outcome is, I'll figure it out. No big deal. And then you go along and you figure it out. But to just start off this particular conversation, I just thought this was, it's a little insanity, actually. And I mean, it's the way a child would respond to you. If you have children or you work with children, you would anticipate and expect that this would be the way that they would respond to you. Well, Bobby did that, well, Susie did this. It's like, well, what does that have to do with what Bobby did? It doesn't have anything to do with it. So I wanted to start it off, it starts off with that, which I thought was very fascinating.
Because at some point you get to the place where you just go, so I'm just going to follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that go out. They're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground. Listen, they don't have to do that.
I'm a Democrat. Tell me what the moral high ground is.
The moral high ground is nobody's above the law. I respect what the jurors are saying. He don't have to do that.
So we're mad at him because he changed his.
Oh no. By the way, I'm not mad at him pardoning Hunter Biden.
But you sound like you're
mad.
No.
If I can get in on this, I actually think it went further, and this is one thing we really disagree on. Joe Biden made a point of saying we stand by our institutions and the impartiality of the Department of Justice.
Yes.
Democrats ran on that. This same DOJ indicted Hunter Biden. We shouldn't be saying it's corrupt like Donald Trump does, but then in his statement pardoning Hunter Biden, he says that it was a political pursuit by his own Department of Justice.
So the comment that Whoopi Goldberg makes at the very first part of that clip is something that I just think is interesting. Again, I find this stuff very entertaining and very interesting, that the way she views and filters life is that, I'm going to do this because that's what's expected of me. What? That's what's expected of you? So you wouldn't do it because your integrity obligates you to do that, because you've set a standard for yourself of quality in life, that you want to be responsible and accountable and do no harm. You're really only doing it because it's expected of you. So that's a flaw, unfortunately for her, and if you watch her for any length of time, you will see she is a massive contradiction of life, where she continues to exalt these flaws that she has as though somehow they're virtue, and they're not. And then I thought this guy Charlemagne, made the point that what he is referring to, which I'm sure you understand, is that, listen, if you have set yourself up on a moral high ground, and we'll talk about more morality in a moment, but if you set yourself up on a moral high ground, you have now painted yourself into a corner, and if you do not live by the sword and die by the sword, people will call out the contradiction. People abhor contradiction. The thing that you can count on nature for is consistency. And the nature of who we are is looking for consistency. It seeks it out. It recognizes it. It may not even be in your consciousness, but it is what makes you go, huh? Or is what smarts for you when certain things are happening and you know that it is incorrect, it is inaccurate. It's because there's an inconsistency. And so often, and we don't use this word enough, and it would be good to probably change the lexicon a little bit and start using the word consistency. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for consistency. I was talking to a friend the other day about the word trust. And, trust is for you, right? It's a personal expression for you to you. You trust yourself. You trust your abilities, you trust your choices, you trust your standards. That does not belong outside of you. Everything outside of you is to be observed. And you're looking for what? The consistency. And because when we start giving trust to other people, say, oh, well, I trust that person, then we know what the dance is. The dance is, I don't want to be responsible for whatever it is you do. And if you do it, then, I can claim that, well, I trusted you. It's like, well, that's only for you. That's for you to trust you, not for you to trust others. you don't need to trust others, right? All you need to do is be responsible, be accountable, pay attention to everything, and watch through observation what is actually happening. Don't abdicate that. Don't outsource that to another person. And so then I liked actually this guy Charlemagne's comment. I don't necessarily like him as a person. I only know him a little bit, but his comment is very prescient. It's, hey, listen, the Democrats in this particular case, they're the ones that laid the groundwork. You made the statement. You made it. You eat it. And the other woman tried to jump in on that conversation. I'm not sure how relevant her piece was to it because it had already been stated. But I'm also a fan of stating something more than once in order for helping people to assimilate or to support anyone that is on an endeavor of setting their own standards to be able to hear it differently, because that helps me a ton. I can hear something 3 different ways and it helps me maybe on the 3rd time. So I thought her comment as well, which was, they lied. And they did lie, but they lied in what way? They lied because they were being inconsistent. If you're going to set a standard and say, this is my standard, this is what I live by, great, then live by it. But if you're going to then retract that, most people will say, this is inconsistent. We've held these people accountable for that behavior, and now you want us to excuse and forgive your behavior for doing the same. Not necessarily from the first clip, not necessarily the thing of, this is what you do, this is what you do, we're blaming and we're, all that garbage. This is more about we're holding people accountable for what they claim for themselves. You tell me what you're able to live up to. Great. You can live up to A, B, and C. Then when you turn around and say, oh, well, but not really A. That's when people are going, wait, what? No, that's not going to work for me.
When it comes to political parties, if you pick a side, right, if you say you're a Democrat, if you say you're a Republican, you refuse to be objective about anything.
That's why I'm an independent.
Yes, but
I think that's the best way to go.
But that's not a monolith. We're not, Democrats are not a monolith.
But why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? And why can't Republicans say when Republicans are wrong?
I'll tell you when Democrats are wrong.
So you don't think Joe Biden is wrong?
No, I don't.
don't.
And can I just point this out to you? The president has a pardon power,
you're
right?
ridiculous.
I didn't say you were ridiculous, Ms. Goldberg.
Yeah,
I would never. I said that. I just think that's
Think
ridiculous.
about it. Just think about it this way.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by pointing out the obvious. One of them is the girl that goes, oh, that's why I'm an independent. I thought, what an interesting thing for you to say. What was it that motivated you that you needed to declare yourself an independent? So she could do what? Oh, so I make sure that nobody knows that I'm associated with any of these people. I just thought, that's funny. Anyway, it was funny to me. But the thing that I noticed was when Whoopi and Charlemagne started going back and forth, he was simply stating what his thoughts were. Because she works from emotion, she filters through emotion, that's all she knows is emotion, she got offended by the statement that he said just very offhandedly, that he just thought that, well, that's just crazy, or whatever word it was that he used. But that's fine. A statement can be crazy. A person can say, I think that's crazy. But she wanted to personalize it. And then what did they do? And then they do this inappropriateness on television in front of everyone. They do this inappropriateness where he has to go over and kiss the ring, literally kiss her ass. Because, I look at it and think, you're talking out your ass because your mouth knows better. It's like, he made a choice for him to go over and have to kiss her ass in order to make everybody know, oh, erase, everything is good, everything is okay. Okay, so where do you think the integrity lies in that little exchange?
ground? Like, what's the faux outrage?
Neither one of them have the moral high ground. That's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. But when you are a diehard Democrat or a diehard Republican, you refuse to be objective about the other party. Like it's like we're watching them do something wrong, but we're making excuses for it. We watch Republicans do things wrong and they make excuses for it. Why can't we just all be objective and call it what it is?
Because it's not balanced.
It's not the same.
But wait, there's more. We gotta go.
So the comment again about, people owning. I made this comment last week, right? That one's own can only correct one's own. That in order for a group of people to self-develop, they have to be able to talk to each other and call each other out on their stuff. Because that's the only way you're going to clean up the schmutz so you can move forward in this life and reestablish your standards, clean up your standards, move yourself to responsibility. But what's interesting is they don't want to hear that. Towards the end of that conversation, they said, it's not balanced. Listen, this is not about balancing your choices with somebody else's choices. This is about you. Life is a path of one. This is about you. You've made the choices. You made it. You eat it. That's how this works. But you'll know if you watch this show at length at all, you'll just know that they are very sinister and deceptive in trying to move off the blame that, and I wouldn't even call it blame, I would just say the responsibility. They want to move off the responsibility of their own behavior or other people's behavior that they happen to support by not holding accountability to the individual. It's the individual we are talking about and the choices made. I don't care what the Trump administration is doing and all of the other stuff. If there's a contradiction, which in this particular case there's a contradiction because there is an inconsistency going on where the president before about his son was saying, this is my standard, this is what I will hold to, no, I will not do, X, Y, and Z as far as a pardon. Great. So then that is your standard. But everyone can see the inconsistency by the choices made, that he is not consistent with the standards that he set. And when that gets exposed and realized, what happens? Well, depending on who you are, if you're the women of The View, then you immediately start blaming the other side. Well, look what they did. It's like, it doesn't matter what they did. And what's so great about this guy, Charlemagne, I should say about his comments, is that he's calling them out on it. He's calling them out on their stuff. One's own must correct one's own. And you were watching it. Go back and watch those clips if you get a chance. You're watching it in real time.
For us a few weeks ago after you were on CNN with Anderson Cooper and called out cable news networks for normalizing Trump. Now that Trump has won, you say that you don't think cable news will ever truly cover him honestly again. Why?
Well, not even just cable news, no network. Nobody, because they didn't do it before, so why would they do it now? They're scared to death. He's the president of the United States of America.
Have you watched The View?
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. Sonny, I saw you have to apologize a couple times last week, so somebody's coming with some notes from downstairs.
Not apologizing.
Okay.
I'm making a legal note as an attorney of law.
Because we have a petty president, our incoming,
yes,
that is going to be very litigious.
Who is litigious, but that doesn't mean that's not a mistake.
And then one more time with this particular clip, it's pretty obvious of the contradiction that is being exposed here, is that they do not want to, what they call, normalize the president-elect, President Trump. And in order to do that, they have to be able to create a narrative. They create a story, not the story, as Dan Bongino would say. And, I mean, obviously, the obvious is that it lacks integrity, it lacks accountability. And I thought the other piece where Charlemagne calls out Sonny and says, well, you had to apologize. Oh, I didn't apologize. I was making, a legal statement. It's like, okay, So now we know who you are. I mean, this is who you are. You will sit there and lie, which you just called out the president, the current president, Biden. He lied about pardoning his son. And you lie, and now you have to make a legal correction in order to not be sued for defamation or slander. Contradiction, contradiction, contradiction. This goes on in our lives through the media, through politicians, but it's so subtle. The game is so subtle that we almost don't notice it. And I encourage you to, hold people accountable. You're not going to be able to hold people accountable for that which you are unwilling to hold yourself accountable. So, the dynamic is there. One thing you can be sure of is that contradiction is only supported by emotions. So if you start seeking examples of contradiction, you'll see that those contradictions are fueled by emotion. And we know that people get fueled by emotion when they are not doing what? Taking responsibility. When they're not being responsible for their choices. And they're trying to point to somebody else's behavior. They're trying to blame somebody else. They're trying to deflect to somebody else. All kinds of distraction to someone else. And when people like Whoopi get on there, they have a sense of entitlement that they have what they call their high moral ground, so thereby they're entitled to say, do whatever it is they want because they've tolerated other people doing their thing. It's like other people doing their thing has nothing to do with you. Either you are or you are not. So which is it? What life do you want to live? What life do you want for yourself is probably the better question to ask. When you are watching and observing yourself and others, keep this in mind about someone having a contradiction about something. That we know from observation that if a behavior is observed, it's been repeated already with a propensity to repeat it again. So if you are observing a person that is living in contradiction, you can be rest assured that this is not the first time that they have done this. This is not the first time that they have expressed themselves this way. They have avoided responsibility. They have avoided accountability. And now you have the secret for yourself and for others to be able to spot it, pay attention to it, and move away from it. Move towards it or move away from it. I'm guessing you want to move away from it. The last thing that I wanted to make sure I mentioned about this is that you hear a lot of people out there saying, oh, I understand, as a father, as a mom, that's my kid, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so if you're sitting there making the claim that I understand why Joe did this and I probably would do it too, you've just revealed to us that you have developed no responsibility and accountability. Great, you favor your child. However, that does not absolve the child from accountability. If you do this and you teach your child entitlement as such, you are damaging your child for the rest of their life. Because accountability is part of nature. You will not get away with it. Somehow, some way, it will have its day. It's part of nature. It is consistent. It is observable. So if you have children, if you are working with children, I encourage you to not do this. Do not favor in such a way that you create an entitlement in someone so they thereby grow up thinking they're entitled to be excused and permissive in their world because mom or dad said so, or, whatever the case may be. One of my favorite sayings that I think I actually wrote this in my book originally too is, You acknowledge all, but you favor none. And in doing this, this is where equality of life is. This is where we extend the equality of life to all of humanity. Because we're no longer playing the game of contradiction. We're not creating a story, creating a contradiction by living one way and doing another. And we're at the end of another podcast for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this. Hit that like button if you would. Share it with your family and friends. You never know how it might help them on their endeavor, developing their own personal standards of accountability and responsibility. All the fun links are down below if you want to subscribe. That's great. Do hit the like button, though. I guess that does impact the algorithms of people being able to see this. It makes it more visible, so that's great. It doesn't cost you anything. Thank you so much. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for. See you next week.